High King Painite. Painite scrutinized Plume until she left his office. Throughout their discussion, his mind's gears churned to discover a way to achieve his desired outcome. Admonition entered the High King's office shortly after she had departed.
"We need to do something about her."
Admonition wrinkled his nose, set in his ruddy face.
"I agree. I want Plume on the permanent staff."
The Painite was certain Plume didn't have it in her to be a true combative mage. She'd never be able to kill. She had proven her magical competence through her mastery of combining wizardry and sorcery. He intended to capitalize on her useful skills if possible. Admonition gaped.
"You can't possibly."
"I can possibly. That's why you will announce the mage's audit at the next council meeting. I will not play favoritism and give her someone else's position just because I find her spirit intriguing and her work ethic noteworthy. If she is to stay, she will earn her place. I'm certain she wouldn't have it any other way either."
"But, Your Highness..."
"I'll need you to prepare for such an event."
Deep lines crinkled Admonition's mouth into a frown.
"Amid the preparations for the Festival of the Wyvern, it will be a madhouse to coordinate two separate events at the same time."
Painite threw his high vizier a smug look.
"Then integrate the two into one. Make the competition over positions a public spectacle. We can't allow the mages to forget who they truly serve."
"You, sir. Of course. It will be for your entertainment."
"They serve all of us, which is why the public's taxes finance the college," Painite said. "Broadly speaking, power serves the whole. Otherwise, what good is power if it only affects change for oneself? Why protect only oneself when we can protect everyone? That's a much more remarkable feat. Any common foot soldier can protect their own skin. A good parent provides for their children the same way a respectable lord protects their region."
"My mistake."
"Keep that in mind. I trust you are protecting this city in every interpretation of the word."
"Indeed, Your Highness."
Admonition looked up at Painite with weary gray eyes.
"What other news comes?"
"The Southern Crusade party has departed Trelia."
"I trust that preparations will be complete by their arrival," Painite said.
"Thankfully, we shall have a gap between the Festival of the Wyvern and the arrival of the Crusaders."
"The arrangements will be perfectly convenient for you then,"
the High King taunted his high vizier.
"Indeed, Your Highness."
Painite smirked at Admonition's irritated expression.
"Aside from heralding a message of warning about Master Plume, what other tidings do you bring?"
9 northern towns have been wiped off the map. The Northern Crusade parties are experiencing no success. D12 claims the Ricicli must have an ingenious strategist with them. There have been rumors that the Behantry have been attacking Sylvani platoons on their way to join D12's company, leading to relatively minor casualties. However, given the pathetic state of Low King Tanzanite's forces, it's an impressive blow to his regional army.
"What news of the other Northern Kingdom's armies?"
"The Ferdinese and Hogenson forces have fortified their borders."
"They aren't assisting Sylvain?" Painite asked.
"No. Up until now, strategists thought that the Ricicli would spread out more, hit multiple spots along the border, so their troops have anchored at their own northern towns. It is as though the Ricicli know of our strategies," Admonition said.
"A traitor?" Painite asked.
"Perhaps."
Continue.
"As one would expect, violent crimes against Rysic citizens have significantly risen in our cities. 20 have fled back to their homelands thus far. Informants claim at least 2 of them have since joined with the rogue band. Helan Gon desires to speak with you about the contentious status of affairs."
Painite tilted his head in consideration.
"I can imagine."
"The warlocks and warlasses of Dark that we previously learned of have been identified, and they are being hunted down. There are also whispers in Devor that King Pyro will not send troops, due to public perception that taxes are too high."
"That's unacceptable. I will ensure King Pyrope sends his troops. What if I commanded Serpentine to preemptively send her forces to lend aid to Tanzanite?" Painite asked.
Admonition raised both eyebrows, gouging numerous wrinkles in his forehead.
"Do you want Hairi to split from this realm entirely?"
"How could she justify not providing soldiers? Serpentine's surrounded by water and the rest of the realm."
"Because she's paranoid someone will invade her lands." Admonition gave a knowing smile. She'll delay releasing her soldiers as long as she believes she can, even if it means disobeying you. Until she releases that eternal storm cloud, she'll avoid risking battle. Besides, she's still chagrined her major general isn't more highly ranked, and that you picked Iolite for your queen consort.
Frustration boiled into fury within Painite, but he restrained the emotion from leaking into his voice.
She only enjoys that peace because Verdun holds the northern front,
and the seafolk hold her western coast.
Land-wise, Painite specified. I recognize the seafolk are impartial.
Of course, Your Highness.
Would it be unreasonable to request soldiers from Legel early? Painite asked, considering the remaining options. They weren't scheduled to march until the southern party drew closer.
Low King Coserai may be amenable, if he can remember that he has an army to command.
I will explain the need and request his aid urgently then.
A fine solution.
Any other news related to the crusade?
Transportation mages have rumored of a child traversing the countryside, encouraging recruits into the armies and advocating that the spawn living in the northern regions take refuge in their kingdom's castles. There was a massive influx of volunteers after this child arrived at each village, spreading his message of warning.
What is this child's name?
Admonition waved a dismissive hand.
Moro, Baro, I don't remember. I can find the old news parchments later. Apparently, he has taken up the sword himself and is doing wonders for motivating Tanzanite's remaining forces and lifting the northern spirits.
Ensure he is awarded a medal for his service, Painite instructed.
Certainly. It'll be my pleasure to honor such a patriot.
Rather, I want him sainted.
An impressive honor to bestow upon him.
The people clearly love him if they're inspired enough to enlist voluntarily. And if his efforts have saved the life of even one spawn, then he should be raised. Besides, his honoring may further perpetuate the tide of enlistments without significant effort from the Sovani administration. Do we know why this child is doing this?
He was the son of a spawn that either died or got captured. He's from Fagori, I believe.
The gears again churned in Painite's mind.
We should encourage a rescue mission of his mother. It will provide a focused goal, rather than the generic task of protecting the border, and it will give the people something concrete to hope for. If we show that we stand in solidarity with him, and if we turn him into the Crusade's icon, it might help with morale. As well, in the process of pursuing hostages, we may find the Reiseglai's hideout. If the soldiers can free any captives, it will be a success, and we'll have the transportation mages spread such stories.
And what will we say if the Reiseglai have slain the spawn?
It would be unfortunate, but we would re-rally the troops. After the realm has become invested in this rescue story, we'll use that result to our advantage either way. If the spawn lives, it will be a morale boost. If the spawn is murdered, it will serve as evidence of just how desperately we require soldiers. We'll sound out another call to arms.
Which result are you hoping for?
I have to wish the spawn to live, but that is not my choice, the High King said.
Which outcome would be more strategic?
Admonition, I know you are not suggesting that you would arrange to murder a spawn, one of my subjects that I have a sworn duty to protect as ruler of this realm.
I am suggesting nothing of the sort.
The advisor wore an off-putting smile.
Painite eyed Admonition.
Anything else of note?
Trading caravans have decreased their activity along the northern trading routes. We provided rooms to the spawn that have sought refuge, and I have tentatively scheduled your council meeting 3 sunrises from now for you to explain your auditing plan to the mages on staff.
Perfect. Thank you for the update, Admonition. Send in my next meeting on your way out, and have Ether visit before the end of the day.
Yes, Your Highness.
As Admonition rose, a mental message came to the king. All of Athlia's beggars have left the city but one. Painite exchanged a concerned glance with his vizier. He would need to dedicate some amount of brainpower to considering the implications later. Admonition left Painite's main office. An enraged Helangon entered a moment later, refusing to sit in the chair across from Painite.
How has nothing been done about that rampant violence towards your Rasic citizens?
Blue spittle flung from Helangon's mouth and stained a blank sheet of parchment on the High King's desk. Painite scooted his heavy chair back along the smooth floor. Given that the Reiseglai could not make facial expressions, Painite assumed the creature's feelings through their tone and body language.
How has the Reisig army still not dealt with their rogues? Painite asked. We are all busy. Everything cannot be addressed at the same time.
The Reisig city-states are coordinating and gathering our forces. We are dependent on a single transportation mage to send all messages between our city-states. It is unrealistic to respond any sooner. Due to your inaction, Reiseglai have become enemies of the realm. How do you expect them to live peacefully as social pariahs?
I expect every citizen to obey the laws and live peacefully, else risk a prison sentence. I will have admonition draft sermons to distribute to every cathedral, to explain the nuances between Reiseglai living among the common folk and the rogues at the border. If that is not sufficient, we'll expand the propaganda and circulate the sentiment in wider channels. I will personally deliver a speech at the Festival of the Wyvern, encouraging tolerance. We'll revisit this topic if the initial efforts do not succeed.
It is insufficient.
What do you propose? Will Helangon's proposition actually lend itself to the Reisig race's best interests? They are a loyal Reiseglai, but not a bright one.
Provide them with protection as well. Post guards at their homes to show that they are just as valuable to protect as the rest of your citizens.
Stunned, Painite could not believe Helangon had proposed such an incredibly thoughtless idea. If Painite were to post guards outside of the homes of every Reiseglai, it would look like the soldiers were keeping the creatures contained, not protected. Perhaps it would work to decrease the violence overall. If the people believed they were safe from the otherwise free-roaming threat, maybe they would be less inclined to act against them. If that is what you request, then it will be done. I will revisit this topic with you later to reevaluate the status of the solution's success. Helangon turned their massive body away from Painite and departed for the hall.
Reiseglai.
The High Financier entered Painite's office and claimed the seat directly across from him. He split out sheets upon sheets of catalogued purchasing and spending items. Painite carefully glanced over each document.
Why are the numbers for the architectural mages log so high?
He scanned the itemized list for the culprit. The architectural mages used titanium beams to reinforce the mines beneath the castle.
How many?
Thousands.
In just this past turn of the moons?
Yes. Painite was flabbergasted by the numbers.
Are there any supplies left over?
No. We're ordering more beams from the storehouses in Devor now. I've been told the mages replaced a substantial portion of the older, weakened structure, the financier said. A project like this should cost this much, but the costs would typically stretch over a longer period. Painite viewed the numbers as a testament to Plume's efficiency. From the first day, Painite had known Spire had forsaken his duties in favor of more appealing work. The High King hadn't had the time to confront the respected mage about the specialized treatment. However, Painite would never again accept his assistance on another project, and he would not be invited to participate in the mage's audit.
Very well.
Painite combed through the rest of the pay balances, food stocks, armor budgets, and miscellaneous supply lists.
These are all authorized to be paid. Next time I see you, I want these lists to be shorter and less expensive.
The High Financier smiled. We do have the festival.
I know. It's becoming such a headache. We should just charge an entry fee to pay for it all. Painite griped. I'm glad to see that you're getting inspired by the festive spirit. Can I ask how King Pyrope handled the financial review of Devor's taxes? Not well, Painite said. But it doesn't matter. Devor enjoys the benefits our government provides as much as all the other kingdoms, and the Devorian people will realize that. Besides, everyone complains about taxes. If we make concessions for one kingdom, then we'll have to make concessions for every kingdom. Not every kingdom has the same buying power as Devor. I've made my decision on the matter. The High Financier nodded. Of course, Your Highness. I will see myself out.
Painite was about to release an exasperated sigh, but Ether entered, so the king quickly composed himself. Admonition requested that I see you, Your Highness, Ether asked.
Yes, I wanted to ask how your sermon was coming along.
It's nearly finalized.
Can you provide me with an outline of what you will be saying?
In previous rotations, both he and Conviction had read the sermon in its entirety before Ether delivered it. This rotation, he wanted to trust the lad to know what to do. It would also give Painite more time to focus on other matters. Ether said, Yes, I was going to give an analytic commentary on Otia's teachings in the context of the Crusade. I would next move on to the history of the First Crusade during the Ninth Age and relate it to the tenets of the faith. I would say that the teachings tell us it is right to defend our neighbors, and that the Crusade follows the spirit of the angels while rejecting the creeds of the demons. Then I was going to conclude by tying it all together to encourage more people to join the fight. Throw in a blessing to the public, the standard content. Okay, you've done this enough times that I trust you with the specifics. For your situational awareness, Admonition is scheduling a council meeting later this week. Thank you for letting me know, Your Highness. Was there anything else? Ether asked. The High King grew a playful expression. I have heard that you've become rather fond of Master Plume. Rumor is that you two have been spending time together in the library. His wings, previously retracted in concentration, grew into long arctic blue icicles. We've bonded over a mutual appreciation of books, but we haven't stood on good terms recently. I'm sorry to hear that, Ether. I hope the situation improves for you. Thank you. He dipped his head. If you haven't yet, I would meditate on your feelings to see if you can resolve the rift between you two, Painite said. Ether nodded and gave a half-smile before exiting the king's office. Painite halted the next meeting for a moment. He waited as he requested updates to flow to his mind. Ether is proceeding from your tower towards the mage's tower. Ether has arrived at the mage's library. Ether has pulled some outdated spell tome from the shelf. Ether is sitting down to read the spell tome. Ether is becoming frustrated trying to teach himself the tome. Ether is screaming at the book. He threw it on the floor and broke the spine. Ether has left it on the ground and stormed out of the library. Painite ceased the constant messages regarding Ether's status. Next. With the representatives from each kingdom, the mages on staff, the generals, and the other high-ranking officials in attendance, Admonition started the council meeting. Plume had not yet arrived. Just as Admonition had finished covering the status of the various crusade parties, Plume entered and glared at her fellow architectural mages. She gave a curt nod to Yarrow. As every seat at the table was occupied, she forced a space in between Tim and Lintel and conjured a barrier in place of a chair. As I was saying, Admonition continued, my fellow viziers and I have deduced that the Vihantri are behind the attacks on the northern and southern crusade parties. Given the High King's previous forgiveness of several of their guild members, we intend to hunt them down and publicly execute them in this instance to show that the crusade is a force that is not to be trifled with, and that we are serious about protecting our spawn and our people. We will widely publicize our intentions and make a spectacle out of it, so our people will not challenge our soldiers. We cannot fight an internal and external war simultaneously. Our land will delve into mayhem if that becomes the case. I trust all representatives will pass word of this decision to their respective monarchs, Painite said. Alarmed glances echoed around the table. He would not address them. They would obey. Plume narrowed her eyes mistrustfully, and while Painite mentally noted to address her suspicions later, other concern occupied his mind. Painite continued, as kingdoms cannot spare additional regional forces due to the crusade, I will send out imperial soldiers to hunt down the outlaws. If they cannot be captured for a public execution, they will otherwise be killed. But we would like to interrogate them first. We have a suspicion that the Vihantri may have plants within the crusade aiding them, or there may be a traitor among them. Admonition said, next is the matter of the mage's audit. We are going to review the mage's standing to ensure the highest standards are maintained and everyone has earned their position to work here. We will accomplish this in a series of public tests held during the Festival of the Wyvern. For the transportation mages, the test will consist of sending objects of varying sizes to specified locations of varying distances. The healing mages will demonstrate the size of barrier of health they can maintain and diagnose an unknown condition based on a list of symptoms and then describe a treatment plan. Weather mages will display the largest barrier of climate they can maintain and prove that they can create various conditions. Our soul alchemic mage will demonstrate a display of ability, but nothing additional will be required. Master Verdigris nodded. The defensive mages will maintain the largest defensive barrier and demonstrate their abilities with force fields. Architectural mages will demonstrate how much weight they can maintain, along with other skills.
and our combative mages will demonstrate their respective mastery over the elements.
Plume sat up straight, ready to take on the challenge. Crockett and Gable snickered together at the concept.
I'll enjoy the competition, even if its primary purpose is not for my entertainment.
Admonition went around the table, asking if there were any updates. One of the defensive mages said, "There was a previous comment that the city had drained of its homeless population. They haven't been killed or anything. I, along with my colleagues, have allowed them to pass outside the castle's walls. There are whispers that a small community is forming in the woods just outside the castle."
"How long has this been going on for?" Painite asked.
"Perhaps for the last turn of the moons or so. It started with just a few requesting to leave, but then they left in droves."
"How many people?"
Painite asked. "Hundreds. Some loners, some families, mostly groups of friends."
"Do I have a volunteer to investigate the forest?"
Painite faced the defensive mages as he said it, but they remained quiet. "I'll do it," Plume said. "I don't have anything else going on."
"You have none of the required training," Admonition said.
Painite ignored Admonition's valid gripe. "Thank you, Plume. I would request that you stay after this meeting so that I may discuss a way forward with you." "Certainly, Your Highness." Plume had the professional acumen not to send a gloating glance toward his High Vizier while Painite still faced her. Admonition probed for updates around the table. Aside from the High Trade Minister mentioning a price increase of produce due to a shortage of certain herbs and vegetables, no one added anything. Admonition dismissed the council meeting and ushered everyone out except for Plume. She moved from the perimeter to a chair near the High King. "I'm assuming I'll be counting people roaming around, know what they're doing, assess their long-term intentions, and learn why they left and where the rest might be."
"Don't pry too much at once. If you can, justify repeated trips. Learn something each time, if natural. If you can't, that's fine. Just building the relationship would be a worthwhile endeavor until they trust you. Find answers to as many of your questions as you can."
"Understood."
"I appreciate you doing this, Plume. As Admonition said, this is not something I would typically ask."
"While you're financing my stay until the festival, I might as well earn it," she said, with unwavering scrupulousness in her eyes. "Besides, I would like to figure out what's going on.